And happy Tuesday, NCAA men's basketball fans. This is your weekly Trogcast, two really old guys talking men's basketball. This old guy's named Jeff Zink, and I'm here with my good buddy, the other old guy, Jim Reaker. Jim, how's it going today?
Pretty good here. You know, Turkey week, everybody getting ready for the big Thursday feast.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're even getting more ready for the turkey feast because you're going to be celebrating little basketballing, aren't you?
Yep, we'll be flying out to Las Vegas first thing tomorrow morning. Spend a little holiday time out there, catch a couple Xavier Musketeer games, maybe a few other games. I can convince my wife to watch more than one a day. But I probably feel kind of like a lot of the teams do this week, kind of rushed. Lots of travel going on to exotic destinations and lots of basketball. You know, the whole Thanksgiving week has kind of become a tradition. We always associate football with Turkey Day, but there's a lot of basketball this week. You can watch from about noon to midnight every day if you want to.
Yeah, we'll be getting to the week to come in a little bit here after we cover a couple other subjects. The first one is, carrying over with what we said earlier, in our first Trogcast about the off season. It seems that suspensions are sort of they seem to be in vogue early in the season, and we're going beyond more than just of course, the famous one. We've got the UCLA actions in China, but Robert Williams at Texas A&M for unknown team violation of team rules. We've got Jeffrey Carroll at Oklahoma State, possible recruiting issues. D'Anthony Melton at USC, the Albany coach Will Brown and his assistant for a game due to recruiting violations, and you just got to wonder. And there's more than that. There's all kinds of things as you go through the list. So you've got to wonder, is this just par for the course, and we're reading that, or is this a reaction to what's happened in the fall beyond Austin Wiley and Danielle Purifoy at Auburn and Louisville? Are teams sort of stepping it up or turning themselves into the NCAA to avoid anything that might happen?
It's hard to say. I think that's maybe some of it. And that's the ultimate black cloud kind of hanging over NCAA basketball. You just never know what's going to happen with the FBI probe. And, in fact, Oklahoma State was one of the schools involved, so you wonder if what they're doing is getting out ahead of something that's happened. I'm not sure. The one with the Albany coach, that one I did read a little bit about. That almost seemed crazy. I guess they had a signing event for a recruit, and they gave him a team jacket, which was approved is their official part of their traveling uniform, so to speak, and that's against the rules, and he gets suspended for a game. So, I guess the bigger question is this FBI thing going to every so often kind of be a big distraction this season? I sure hope not, because, as a fan, we hate to see that. And so, but only time will tell. And, of course, everybody's heard about the UCLA thing, and that, I think, in itself is going to be a distraction for them. Obviously, three major players, I believe they were all expected to do playing some significant minutes. And we saw last night they got beat pretty bad by Creighton. So, Steve Alford, I think, is maybe going to have his hands full out there because, and that with the father, LeVar Ball, we could talk about that all day, but we won't. And his Twitter war with President Trump, just a distraction that I don't think college basketball needs.
Well, I'm going to take a total hiatus from talking about that father. I won't even mention his name because I think it's all about him, not the game or his kids. But when you look at the totality of it, I mean, Arizona suspending assistant coach Mark Phelps, and forward Keanu Pinder, Kansas Billy Preston, Alabama Colin Sexton, Texas A&M, like I already mentioned, Robert Williams and J.J. Caldwell went there. And they lost another to academic issues. You got Rob Gray in Houston. You got David Scarra in Clemson. Arizona State's Romello White. Plus, it's just you hope that the teams are starting to police themselves. Like you say, that the issue in Albany, those coaches knew they couldn't give that kind of gift, and if they didn't, somebody needed to get to them right away and say, hey, you can't do that. Luckily, they accepted their suspension without a whole lot of fight. But it just you just got to wonder. We talked earlier about the AAU effect on NCAA basketball, and you talked about the black cloud hanging over it, and I think it is going to be, sort of waiting for that other shoe to drop, or sort of the sword of Damocles hanging over people's heads by a string. Who else might fall? You just hope it doesn't affect things too much. But what you also said is it is already affecting some of the games. And we're going to talk about those as we get into the week. But it's just a crazy mixed-up start to the year with all these suspensions sitting right there. And then, like you say, also the unfortunate publicity issues that some people try to take advantage of, which just shouldn't be. I mean, even to say that shoplifting really isn't a crime, but also the violation of the trust of people whose country you're in as a guest just doesn't sit well at all with me personally.
Yeah, and a final note on this whole issue is I kind of feel bad for the players in thinking that most of these that are, if they're involved in these recruiting violations, these are 18-year-old kids who are being put in a position. They are adults, and put yourself in that position, either being offered a lot of money or whatever else by someone who's been in the business for a while. They have to be thinking to themselves, well, is this just the way it is? That's a sad thing, that they're putting these young men in a position to make a decision that is a very tough decision to make. Obviously, they know right and wrong, but especially some of these players may be coming from backgrounds where they don't have a lot of money, or families have spent a lot of money to try to get to a position where they could get into the NBA and make a living for themselves and even their entire family. That's just a sad thing that there's adults putting these very, very young adults in that precarious position to make that decision, and then their whole life maybe being scarred by them making the wrong decision. That's another thing. I just, you hate to see it, because, we all kind of look at sports and college basketball as kind of a recess from, what else is going on in the world. And it's sad that it's come to this.
Yeah, I'm with you on that entirely. And like I said, there's something you could talk about all day, but you don't want to. You just want to put the point out there. So let's go to the week that was. A pretty interesting start to the week, which was just, only 8-9 days ago. But there's the first news would go with this is the quick injuries. Michael Porter Jr. at Missouri is hurt, and that's sitting on the side. And then Miles Bridges gets hurt during Stony Brook. How much is that going to affect Mizzou and Michigan State?
Well, I'm not sure Mizzou's I don't know how good they're going to be. In fact, I kind of look at Michael Porter Jr. as maybe the Ben Simmons or Markelle Fultz of this season. He was a big sought-out. He might be the top player coming out, in the country, top recruit. But can he take the Missouri team, which has really slid way down in the rankings and success in college basketball? Can he do it all himself? probably not. But he's back, I believe, and it'll be interesting to see, what Missouri does with him.
Yeah, and you got Quanzo Martin coming over from the Pac-12, trying to build something there. I'm with you. We definitely know he's a one-and-doner, and then there was the whole thing about his father being hired on as a coach and him changing his commitment to not even be able to take the court. I'm pretty sure the bigger story is going to be Miles Bridges, who came back and could have gone to the NBA. Michigan lost to Duke in the State Farm Champions Classic, but nobody. Both those teams are good. It was a good game. I know Coach Izzo wasn't all that happy with his boys on the defensive boards, giving away 25 offensive rebounds to Duke, which might have turned the thing. But Miles Bridges is the piston that runs that offense, and I think it is going to hurt Michigan State with him out.
Yeah, and if you remember, he was injured part of the season last year and kind of led to their early slow start. So is Tom Izzo seeing the same thing? Just a note on that Champions Classic or whatever they called it, I was very impressed with Duke. Duke with Grayson Allen scoring 37 points, and then the 4 highly regarded freshmen starting with him. Another injury, though, and I don't think it's that serious, actually got poked in the eye, was Marvin Bagley III. He was having a great game to start that out, and then got hit in the eye and didn't play the rest of that game. Hopefully he'll be back soon. He looks like a real talent, might be one of the top players in college basketball this year. I think the Dukies are looking really good. Yeah, Michigan State's going to stumble a little bit. Kansas, UK, again, that's that game. It seems like they always play every year, and that game really doesn't matter much. Again, though, I will restate, it doesn't seem that, in fact, last night, the Wildcats, UK, I think that they're off to an undefeated well, they lost to Kansas, but they actually struggled a little bit against Troy last night. The final score was only an 8-point difference. So, again, I'm not sure that Coach Calipari has quite the talent he's had in there before, but only time will tell. And then a final note is I hope Grayson Allen has a good season, all the things that he's dealt with over, some of them self-inflicted, obviously. Mm-hmm. But you'd like to see the young man mature, and obviously he's a great basketball talent. He was on fire, and hopefully he'll have a good season and put all that riffraff behind him.
I'm with you. Nothing perks up. And Bagley was back in the lineup against Southern and Furman earlier this week, so I think we're okay on that one. That brings us to a couple of, not real surprises early in the year, but big question marks. First one's got to be Northwestern, who lost by 36 to Texas Tech, and then also turns around and loses to Creighton, 2 teams that I think Chris Collins didn't expect. I mean, tough schedule at the beginning of the year, but that put some big question marks on the board for the Wildcats. Yeah,
and as you know, they always had it out in front of them that they had never made the NCAA tournament, so that was their goal and their focus last year. But a lot of times with many athletic teams at a lot of different levels, see it in the NFL a lot, once you have some success, sometimes it's hard to motivate yourself to maintain that success. One other issue that Northwestern's dealing with, probably because of their success, excuse me, they're remodeling their on-campus arena, so they're actually using the All-State arena that DePaul had used, the off-campus place, and that probably has a little bit of effect on their fan base, their students getting to the game. So, yeah, not a great surprise, but yeah, you would have thought they maybe got off to a little bit better start. It's tough to maintain that, year in, year out, being competitive or at the top of the echelon in NCAA basketball.
Mm-hmm. I guess the other big thing, not a huge surprise here, but because the Big East, and it was Creighton who was kind of expected to have a bit of a down year. In fact, a couple of schools tried to steal their coach out there, but they come in early and they like I said, just dumped Northwestern by 4 and also beat UCLA by 11, which you've already mentioned. So that's going to perk up some ears around the country.
Yeah, and, that's really what I look at this week or actually the next 2 or 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or including Thanksgiving. What this is important for is the leagues and where they get their power rankings, how the entire league does overall. That's what's important, and you find a lot of people, even myself, who have obviously a Xavier fan, but I find myself cheering for Big East teams, knowing that the more Big East teams that win, especially against the Power 5 conferences, the higher their power ranking is going to be, and ultimately, come March, that's going to be important because that's an important factor a lot of times when we're talking about NCAA and who gets in and who doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. Another team to note, we talked a little bit last week about Greg Marshall and Wichita moving over to the American Athletic, and they just barely escaped the Hawaii tournament curse to Cal last night. Do you think it'll catch up to them with the number 6 Shockers against Marquette tonight?
Well, again, obviously I'll be cheering for the Golden Eagles, as they call them, because, again, that's a Big East team that would help the ranking of that conference. Here's what I think Wichita State, I think they got 2 things going against them this year, and it'll be interesting to see how they react to it. In fact, I caught the very end. I was just flipping around before I left for the Xavier game last night, and it was a tie game, so it was very, very close. I think they ended up winning by 10, but it was a lot closer than that. I think within the last 3 minutes it was tied. But here's what Wichita State and Greg Marshall are up against. Number one, they got that target on their back now. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. They're ranked number 6 in the country. Some people picking them to be a Final Four team. And secondly, and we've talked about this before, they made a move to the American Conference. And not to shun I think it was the Missouri Valley they were in, but the American Conference, I think they're going to get tested more day in and day out than they did in the Missouri Valley, where they have been kind of the kingpin for a long time. So, again, it's going to be a challenge for them, and it'll be interesting to see how they react to it. Obviously, a good team, and I believe they returned every starter. So that will be a team to watch and see how that plays out. But, again, a lot of programs, they want to up their schedule. They want to up who they're playing to try to get to the next level. So we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, and teams that, it doesn't happen every year, but it seems like it happens every year that somebody goes out to Hawaii and takes a stumble going all the way back to when Ralph Sampson's Virginia Cavaliers got beat by the host Chaminade team out there. So a lot of things going on there. Another team early to watch, we talked a little bit about them last week, has got to be Billy Kennedy's Texas A&M Aggies. And we talked last week about them taking down what's always a tough West Virginia defensive team in Germany. But now, getting Robert Williams back from that suspension that we talked about, they stomped Oklahoma State, which is a team that people thought had some grit to them. And now they're going to have a big test coming up on Sunday when they go to Los Angeles to take on Andy Enfield's Trojans of USC.
Yeah, and look down the road, just I think another week, they actually have Arizona, who I believe is ranked second in a lot of polls on their schedule too. Here's where I see them out comparing to, I think they're last year's Baylor, a team that kind of comes out of nowhere and gets on a roll and beats some big opponents and really improves their power ranking. And, in fact, they're ranked number 16th, and I think they started maybe outside the top 25, but at least very, very high in the top 25. But, if they go 2 weeks and, again, if they can knock off USC and Arizona, that's a team I could see we'll turn around. They'll be ranked in the top 5 maybe in the country, and everybody will be talking about them. Of course, and they're in the SEC, so and I'm not sure which side they're in, but I would guess that they will have a match or two with the UK Wildcats. So that's a team to watch. That not a school that we've thought of as a basketball school, more of as a football school in the past, but obviously off to a great start. And they'll be someone to watch how they finish out this non-conference schedule before they get into the SEC?
Well, the only thing I think I'd really slightly question what you said there is the Baylor reference. Baylor sort of came out of nowhere last year. Nobody had them ranked. They had no points for Texas A&M. Did start in the top 20. And remember, this is a team that took Kentucky to the final minutes in a couple of hard-fought games at different times over the past couple of years. So Billy Kennedy likes to go after the Wildcats. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in Los Angeles. And you're right, on the 5th, the following week, they do have Arizona. So a lot of teams lining up for that. But I think one of the most interesting stories, we didn't cover it much last week other than to say it was Coach K's 1,000th win, was the Utah Valley University Wolverines. And they ended up calling it the 24 Hours of Doom. I don't know if you saw this, but they flew into Lexington on a Friday and took on Kentucky. And they did lose to them 73-63, but had them down by 9 at the half. And then had to turn right around and play at Cameron Indoor late the next afternoon. Of course, that didn't work out too well. So the Dukies took them 99-69. They've lost 3 straight. And this is obviously one of those things where the host school pays them to come in and be one of the cupcakes. But it was just an interesting journey. Lots of videos on ESPN and Sports Illustrated about this. And they just seemed to have the time of their life, but also felt they could play with the big boys.
Yeah, it's on a lot of levels. It's very good for a mid-major program like that. Number one, what an experience to get to play in 2 of the hallowed grounds of college basketball in Rupp Arena and Cameron Indoor Stadium. But yeah, obviously it's a windfall profit. They're getting paid, I'm sure, big bucks for a program like that. I'm sure that money could be put to a good use to help improve the program. And then the third thing, as you kind of alluded to, it probably helps them down the road when they get into their actual conference play. Having been in those big environments under pressure against top quality players, probably they think it'll pay off, even though they didn't win or either game. It'll pay off down the road for them. But yeah, what an experience! I would love to be a player on a team like that who gets to go into those 2 great stadiums.
Yeah, it was interesting because they even got a pep talk from Shane Battier coming in, and he played with UVU's assistant coach Chris Burgess. But it just they had a great night of it, or weekend of it, and it'd be interesting to see how the Wolverines attack from here on out. So very interesting start to the NCAA season, and that brings us into things to come. We already talked a little bit about Wichita State tonight against Marquette and Texas A&M. I guess another big game, we just alluded to it. You talked about the Big Ten schedule. That sort of starts early. Northwestern is going to play Wisconsin, and that's a team you saw up front and personal. This might be one, playing in that arena up there. Northwestern just could take something on the chin. They've already dropped out of the top 25. They don't want it to get worse.
Yeah, and Wisconsin actually got beaten last night in I think it's a Hall of Fame Classic or something out in Kansas City by Baylor last night. So they've started out with a tough schedule. And, yeah, I saw that. That's interesting. That league has expanded to 14 teams, and they're starting their conference schedule. I saw some games, the first week of December, which I don't know if I would like that because, as you always say, there's kind of like 3 seasons. There's your non-conference schedule, then you kind of reboot, and the first of the year you go into your conference schedule, and then of course the third season, hopefully for most teams, is the post schedule, the tournament, the NCAA. But yeah, it's kind of tough. A month into the season, you're playing games that might determine who your conference champion is, or at least the seeding. So I wouldn't like that. But again, I'm sure the Big Ten, again, they're involved in a lot of these. I think there's a Big Ten ACC challenge maybe later. So it just probably comes to a point where they got to play some of those games early, but I wouldn't like that as a coach or a fan of any of those teams.
Not in the conference, I think. We wait for that, but you know how tough it is to schedule these things sometimes. But the big action for the Thanksgiving days and the big Thanksgiving weekend is the big tournament in Portland, the PK 80, the Phil Knight Invitational, celebrating Phil Knight's 80th birthday. And just listen to some. I mean, the first round is. There's a couple cupcakes in there, and they invited some locals, but just listen to the teams that are in this tournament. Ohio State plays Gonzaga. Florida's going to play Stanford. Duke plays Portland State. Butler plays Texas. Portland will play North Carolina. Arkansas plays Oklahoma. UConn plays Oregon. And Michigan State plays DePaul, which is a replacement for Georgetown, which had to drop out of the tournament. I mean, talk about, you don't often see that many luminaries in Santa Fe during Christmas or even in a tournament. That's going to be some good basketball up there in Portland this weekend.
Yeah, I remember that when I was in Florida last year, they were advertising that tournament on the big board during timeouts. My question, because I haven't really looked at that, is that all one big tournament? Will there be one champion, or is there like two brackets? And is it all being played at one venue? I mean, yeah, if you're a college basketball fan, that would be a heck of a tournament to have a ticket to if you got to see all those games. But I almost wonder if they're not playing some of those simultaneously in two different venues. Do you know any more about that?
I was trying to find some information. They're listing it as an invitational tournament, and it's at two of the venues there in Portland. Let me see if I can find whether they've got a bracket in here or not. But I do believe it's sort of listed as a tournament that will name a champion. Because, I mean, with 16 teams.
Yeah, that's got to be played over at least 4 days, and you think it's probably even more. I can't.
The final game is, there are brackets. So, and it's also, what's nice about it, we're talking about this, it's a men's and a women's bracket. So there's all that.
Okay.
So it does play out to where there will be a winner overall, and that will be tabbed on Sunday.
And your concern as a coach there would be, wow, that could really take a lot out of your team, especially with the quality opponents. You're going to go play a quality team, and you hit a rough patch and you lose 3 or 4 games. What effect could that have on your season, as we're only, less than a month into it? So great event, sounds like, for the fans who wasn't so far away. I'd maybe try to put that one in, but that'll be fun to watch. And that one starts this week?
It starts Thursday, I believe, is the first game, right on Thanksgiving Day. The first session is Thursday at 11:30. That's North Carolina playing Portland, and then it's in session. Arkansas will play Oklahoma. UConn will play Oregon. Michigan will play DePaul on the one side. So that's what they're calling the victory bracket. And then the motion bracket, and this will be in the other venue. Like I said, Duke plays Portland State, Texas plays Butler, Stanford in Florida, and Ohio State and Gonzaga. So this could be something that they get out again for Phil Knight. And if you've been living under a rock in athletics for the past 60 years, Phil Knight is one of the founders of Nike and does a great job. And if all those wacky uniforms you see at Oregon are his sort of babies over the year, because that's one of his alma mater. So, and you were talking earlier, Jim, talking about basketball all day. A lot of these guys are on ESPN or ESPNU, or they'll decide a little bit later in conjunction with Nike when they'll be on the air. But some fantastic basketball continues, and we'll be able to talk about that all next week on our Trogcast afterwards, and Jim will be able to tell us about his trip to Las Vegas, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well on our Razorcast, which will be sometime this weekend again, a little off schedule. Jim's traveling, and we'll be watching games on Thursday, so that might have to be Friday before we can get that. Just look for it posted on The Grueling Truth. Well, Jim, anything else you want to talk about or add before we go on to our trivia or tidbits?
One other game I'll be watching. It'll be interesting, I believe, and it's some tournament somewhere. Again, there's so many tournaments and showcases and things going on. Of course, it's obviously an advantage of the rule where you could play in one of these and it only counts as one game. But one game I'll be particularly paying attention to today, I think will say a lot about two teams. And again, for obvious reasons, I'm concerned or interested in these two teams. But Creighton will be playing Baylor today sometime. So I'll be watching that game.
Mm-hmm.
Give us an idea of where those teams are going.
Continuation of what they're doing out there with the game that Creighton played last night against UCLA. So, yeah, some fantastic basketball, and we'll look forward to sharing it all with you as we continue our Trogcast through the season and into the holiday season. We'll make sure we wish you a happy Thanksgiving now before we get to our trivia and stuff, and enjoy whether you're watching NCAA football or basketball or just hanging out with family and friends. Enjoy and give thanks for the day and the good weather that's continued to be here in the Cincinnati area. Well, Jim, I'm sure you've looked something up here that the listeners probably wait to the end of the program just to hear what kind of fun trivia question you've dug up. So what do you got today?
Got a good one for you, Jeff. Might be too easy for you, you know. You like how I preface that, right? Pressure's on. All right, we're going to go back in NCAA history a little bit. In the 1949-50 season, the City College of New York did something that no other team has ever done, and your key hint here, and as the things are right now, can never happen again. Do you know what feat they accomplished in the 1949-50 season? City College of New York, which used to be a basketball power early in the NCAA days.
Well, I believe you're talking about the season in which, and it's the only time it's happened, a team won the NCAA tournament and the NIT.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Here's another tidbit. I didn't know this. I don't know if you did or not. They actually beat the same team in the championship game of both tournaments. Mm-hmm. And I know you can't tell me who that was. I wouldn't even expect you to know that one.
Yeah, I believe I can, Jim, because this is it's not something we talked about last week on one of our casts. I don't know, because we talked specifically about that, and it was Bradley.
You are correct, the Bradley Braves.
Bradley.
Which used to be another NCAA power back in the day. I think they're still part of the old Missouri Valley or the new Missouri Valley, which weren't the UC Bearcats in the Missouri Valley back in that day? They
were for a while. And, of course, what's sad about that is it was the next season or the season after that CCNY got hit with their point shaving scandal, which really tarnished their reputation. And they just weren't the basketball powerhouse that they ever were. And I'm pretty sure they're not even a Division I team anymore. They're probably
you don't hear about them, or maybe they don't even have a program. So
they might not even go by CCNY anymore. I'm not really sure.
So we've gone full circle today, Jeff, from scandal today to scandal of past.
and read up on that, because it's very interesting the way some of the guys describe that, and then you can go into the Boston University scandal from about 17 years later, in which Henry Hill of the movie Goodfellas was involved, and there's an ESPN 30 for 30 on that as well, what some of the players went through, because a lot of times it wasn't playing to lose, it was just playing to not cover the point spread. So it's an interesting, difficult thing. Okay, just a couple fun things I've got here on Phil Knight, coming up on his 80th birthday. People know Phil Knight got his start running for the famous Oregon track coach Bill Bowerman. Do you know who the actors were that played Bill in the two Steve Prefontaine movies by any chance, Jim?
No.
I know it's not your thing. The famous Canadian actor Donald Sutherland played him in the movie Without Limits, when Billy Crudup played Steve Prefontaine, and Lee Ermey, the famous drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, played him in another movie in which Jared Leto played Prefontaine. And the name of that movie was Prefontaine. But he played for the famous coach in the late 50s, running for him when he earned a journalism degree from Oregon. But what's kind of neat that I thought in looking at him from today is his father, Bill Knight, was the publisher of the Oregon Journal. And his son wanted to go into journalism, but not only did he help him get into journalism, but he helped him get into running. When he was in high school, he refused to give his son a job at the Oregon Journal. He said, you got to make it on your own. You can't do it through nepotism. So Phil took a job with the rival Oregonian, and he worked the night shift tabulating sports scores to be ready for the morning paper. And the way he got his training in is the office of the Oregonian was 7 miles from his home. So he would run the 7 miles to work and run the 7 miles back to get in shape. And at one time in his career, and you got to remember this was the mid-50s, and they hadn't been on, he ran a 4:10 mile in competition. So he was quite the athlete. And then when you talk about getting people in the Phil Knight Invitational, he also taught at Portland State, which is probably one of the reasons that he's inviting the local schools, and that's where he met his wife. And you and I are both lifelong teachers. He met her while he was teaching there. Do you have any idea what Phil taught? This is a tricky one.
Well, you could say maybe PE, obviously was an athlete and had a background in that, or you could say journalism or English, obviously had an interest and background in that. But I'm going to go off the map here and just say psychology.
Now, all good guesses that because he's good at it all, but actually he spent the early part of his life as a certified public accountant for Price Waterhouse, and he was teaching accounting at Portland State at the time that he met his wife in the late 1960s. So happy birthday out there, Phil Knight. What's that?
Obviously, some of those business classes paid off.
Yeah, a little bit. He worked with several people, including his coach, Bill Bowerman, who made the waffle design on the bottom of running shoes with his wife's waffle maker. It's one of those old stories, and to give them better traction and not necessarily needing metal cleats when they ran, the cushions. But they started Nike, and it's turned out okay. I mean, Phil's estimated net worth is only around $24 billion. So
yeah,
I think
the iconic swoosh. I mean, I think the only other, maybe Under Armour rivals that today, but there isn't anything more iconic. I mean, you probably put that swoosh in front of 100 people, and 99 of them can tell you what it is. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Like I said, we'll be back on the air with our next Trogcast next Tuesday, and listen for our Razorcast sometime on Friday. Of course, you just look for them posted on the Grueling Truth website, and enjoy a great week of NCAA basketball.
Happy Turkey Day.